This whole nightmare started with Karen smashing my trash bin over and over again 57 times, to be exact, using her $60,000 Escalade. So, I swapped my flimsy bin for a concrete one and let her wreck her own luxury SUV instead. What began as her routine morning destruction quickly spiraled into criminal charges, a $12,000 settlement, and a very costly reminder that picking the wrong neighbor to harass can backfire in ways you don't expect. Picture it: the sharp crack of plastic shattering breaks the quiet morning air, followed by the metallic scrap of a bumper dragging across pavement. A pearl white Escalade roars off, leaving my garbage scattered across the driveway like party confetti. Here's the truth about bullies: they rarely expect their targets to fight back with actual proof, let alone proof made of solid concrete. By the time this feud reached its peak, Brenda, the self-appointed compliance officer of the neighborhood, had totaled her own vehicle, exposed herself in a $47,000 embezzlement scandal, and learned the hard way that not everyone folds under fake authority and a smug clipboard. Now let me ask you, what would you do if your neighbor treated your property like their personal demolition derby every single morning? Drop a comment and tell me where you're tuning in from. I want to see if this brand of home insanity happens where you live, too. But let me rewind and explain how this all started. My name is Marcus Holloway. I'm 45, an electrician with 22 years of experience, and recently divorced. I've been fighting for joint custody of my kids, Emma, who's 16, and Tyler, who's 14. We live in Pinewood Gardens, a cookie-cutter suburb in Ohio where lawns are measured down to the inch and even the mailbox colors are dictated by the rulebook. 3 years ago, right after signing divorce papers, I bought a corner lot house here. I thought it would be a fresh beginning, kids in good schools, their own rooms, a safe neighborhood. What I didn't bargain for was dealing with Brenda Whitmore, a 52-year-old widow who crowned herself compliance officer of our neighborhood. That title doesn't even exist in the HOA bylaws, but that didn't stop her. Brenda drives a pearl white Escalade the size of a small apartment. She moved here around the same time I did, after her husband passed away. No kids, retired banker, and best friends with the HOA president, Gerald Thornfield, which basically makes her untouchable. Now here's where location matters. My corner lot means the city requires me to put my trash bin near the curb every Tuesday morning within 3 feet of the street. The problem? That spot is right along the path Brenda power walks every morning at 6:15 a.m. The first incident happened in September, the second week of school. I was making coffee while the kids got ready. The garbage truck still 20 minutes away. Then a crack, a gunshot-like noise. I ran outside to find my trash can blown apart, garbage spread across the driveway like a confetti bomb. And there was Brenda, backing up her Escalade, rolling down the window with a fake look of concern. "Oh my," she said with zero sincerity. "These streets are just so narrow." I hope you weren't too attached to that old thing. Old thing? I'd bought it brand new the week before at $23 at Home Depot. But I swallowed my frustration, cleaned up the mess, and assumed it was an accident. Emma and Tyler stood at the window, embarrassed, watching their dad crawl around the driveway in pajamas, scooping up soggy cereal boxes and coffee grounds. But that week, it happened 3 more times. Same routine, 6:15 sharp, the growl of her engine, the crunch of plastic, and her driving off like nothing happened. By the next Tuesday, I knew it wasn't an accident. Mrs. Olivia, my elderly neighbor across the street, confirmed my suspicion. In her careful English, she told me, "She takes long way around on purpose. Plenty of room on other side, but she always goes close to your can." So I tried reasoning with Brenda. One afternoon I stopped her during her daily patrol. "Hey, about the trash can situation." She cut me off with a sugary smile. "Marcus, I know you're still adjusting to community living. These streets were made for regular-sized vehicles, not oversized containers blocking traffic. Maybe you should consider timing adjustments." Timing adjustments? As if there's some magical hour when the garbage truck doesn't expect the bin by the curb. That night I started digging through property law, HOA bylaws, and city ordinances. Turns out, trash bins on the curb are still considered personal property. Even better, Our HOA rules don't say anything about timing or materials, only that bins can't be visible from the street except on collection day. By the end of the month, I'd replaced 4 trash cans and $92 gone. My kids were stressed out. My custody evaluator was taking notes about neighborhood stability issues, and I knew something had to change. That's when Brenda started smirking at me every morning as she rammed my can. She made direct eye contact with this smug little smile that said she knew exactly what she was doing. Game on. By mid-October, she escalated from property damage to outright harassment. One day I came home to find a certified letter waiting. Just holding the heavy paper made my stomach drop. It wasn't some foreign letter, it had been freshly printed just for me. Improper trash receptacle placement creating traffic hazard. It read in stiff legal language. Section 4.7.3. Violation must be corrected within 72 hours or fines of $50 per day would begin. She had clearly rushed this through the system, probably while the whole board was still distracted from the evidence I presented at the last meeting. But here's where my electrician background helped me out. When something doesn't add up, you keep digging. That night I pored over city laws like I was troubleshooting a short circuit. 3 hours later, I found my silver bullet. City code requires trash bins to be within 3 feet of the curb on collection day. Even better, HOA jurisdiction stops at the property line. They legally can't regulate the public right-of-way. I'd read about a California homeowner who won a similar fight, so I spent the weekend preparing my defense like I was studying for the contractor's exam all over again. Ring doorbell camera installed, perfectly aimed to capture the morning demolition. $47 for peace of mind. To make sure I had every angle covered, I ordered a property survey confirming my trash bin placement was fully compliant with city regulations. I even persuaded Mrs. Olivia across the street to sign a written statement, though her hand trembled as she put pen to paper. "I don't want trouble," she whispered, "but this isn't right." Meanwhile, Brenda had shifted gears into full-blown social media prosecutor mode. She lit up the Nextdoor app with dramatic posts about reckless homeowners endangering children and hazardous corner obstructions forcing drivers into danger. The comments section turned into a battlefield of her 3 diehard supporters on one side, everyone else rolling their eyes at her crusade. Then came the twist that showed how desperate she was getting. Dave, a friend of mine who works in the city's permit office, gave me a call. We'd done electrical projects together over the years, so he knew what was going on. "Marcus," he said, barely holding back laughter, "the city's logged 4 separate complaints about your so-called dangerous corner. All filed within 15 minutes at 2:47 in the morning. Each complaint claimed to be from a different resident, but the writing style gave it away. Same phrasing, same tone, clearly all Brenda. Either your block is crawling with insomniacs who write exactly alike," Dave chuckled, "or someone's working overtime to take you down." By Thursday's home meeting, I had a binder thick enough to stop a bullet. The community center reeked of industrial carpet cleaner and stale bureaucracy. A dozen homeowners turned up, a record-breaking crowd that had President Thornfield tugging at his eye like it was strangling him. Brenda sat at the board table in a stiff navy blazer meant to scream authority, but I caught the tiny shake in her hand when she reached for her water. She knew what was about to happen. When they called for old business, I rose from my chair, documents in hand. "I'd like to address the violation notice regarding my trash can," I said. The room went silent. The fluorescent lights buzzed faintly overhead as I read the city ordinance aloud, word for word. Then I presented my survey results, which confirmed perfect compliance. The finishing blow, mentioning that I'd consulted with property rights attorney Amanda Sterling, who had handled countless HOA battles. She was especially intrigued by the pattern of selective enforcement. As I dropped her name, I saw Brenda's face strain of color. President Thornfield cleared his throat at once, twice, 3 times before muttering, "Well, this will require further review. We'll table the matter pending additional consideration." Translation: they had nothing, and everyone in the room knew it. But Brenda wasn't finished. As people filed out, she cornered me under the humming security lights of the parking lot. Her mask slipped completely. "You think you're clever?" she hissed, loud enough for half the neighborhood to hear. People like you move into decent communities and think the rules don't apply. Well, I've got news for you. This is just the beginning. The words dripped with venom, the undertone impossible to miss. Mrs. Rodriguez from Maple Street audibly gasped. Jim Torres, the maintenance guy, stared at his keys like they were the most fascinating thing on earth. Everyone present caught the ugly implication. Luckily, my phone had been recording the whole thing from its spot in my shirt pocket. Every poisonous word was captured. That night, Emma asked why the mean lady hated us so much. Tyler wanted to know if we'd have to move again. I tucked them in, promising things would work out, but inside I was doing math. 3 destroyed trash cans, 14 hours of documentation, attorney fees piling up. Still, I could sense a shift. The neighbors were starting to whisper about board overreach, questioning why Randa's rules only seemed to apply to me. Her outburst in the parking lot had pulled back the curtain. It wasn't about traffic safety or community standards. It was about control, power, and making sure people she didn't like were kept in their place. The next morning, her behavior confirmed it. Instead of plowing into my bin as usual, Brenda crept past at a crawl, studying it like a general plotting her next attack. And attack she did. November arrived with icy winds, and Brenda came at me harder than ever. While I was celebrating what felt like a win, she had been busy scouring the HOA handbook like a prosecutor building a RICO case. The violations came one after another. First, I noticed that my grass measured 2.75 inches, apparently a hair above the 2.5-inch maximum. Then, my mailbox color, which had faded from heritage blue to something she declared an unauthorized shade of weathered navy. Finally, she flagged 3 tiny tears in my window screens so small you'd need a magnifying glass to see them. Each violation carried a $50 fine with 10-day deadlines, but I wasn't about to roll over. I spent the Saturday walking the neighborhood with a measuring tape and camera. Thornfield's grass, nearly 3 inches. Mrs. Patterson's mailbox, faded to the exact shade as mine. Half of Maple Street had torn screens from the summer hailstorm. Yet somehow, only I was singled out. While Brenda was busy playing bylaw prosecutor, I found myself having coffee at Home Depot's contractor desk with an old friend, Dale Kowalski. He's been pouring concrete for over 2 decades. I told him about the trash can wars, and he just grinned knowingly. You realize there's nothing in city code about what trash bins have to be made of, right? He said, stirring sugar into his coffee with a paint stick. Plastic, metal, concrete tap. It doesn't matter. As long as it holds garbage and fits the size limits, you're fine. That conversation planted the seed of Brenda's worst nightmare. All it would take was 60 pounds of concrete mix, some steel rebar, and a little creative modification to a standard plastic shell. Total cost? $47, far cheaper than the $350 in fines I was staring down. The fines were piling up, and I was tired of replacing trash cans. But before I could enjoy my concrete plan, I had to push back against Brenda's harassment campaign. Tuesday night, I put together a full photo log of every violation in the neighborhood that matched or exceeded mine. By Wednesday morning, I'd filed a formal complaint with the HOA board, accusing them of selective and discriminatory enforcement. If there's one thing I have learned from 2 decades of pulling electrical permits, it's this: bureaucrats hate when you use their own systems against them. My complaint forced the board into a corner where they'd either have to enforce the rules fairly across the whole neighborhood, or admit they were deliberately targeting me. Either way, Brenda was in trouble. Then I dug deeper. Analyzing her track record over the past year, I found she'd issued 67 violations. 49 of them were aimed at single parents, elderly neighbors, or minorities. Only 18 went to married couples or long-term residents. The pattern was so blatant it practically spelled lawsuit. I remembered reading how discriminatory enforcement in HOAs can trigger Fair Housing Act violations and even federal investigations. The thought of Brenda having to explain her random citations to a civil rights attorney gave me the first real smile I'd had in weeks. That Friday, I finally started the concrete project. Emma and Tyler helped me in the garage, laughing as we mixed cement to the sound of classic rock on my old paint-splattered radio. The smell of wet concrete took me back to being a kid, helping my dad pour the basement floor. Something permanent, something built to last. The design was simple but clever: a hollow bottom for weight distribution, drainage holes to keep it functional, and an outer shell identical to every other trash bin in the neighborhood. From the street, it looked completely normal. Inside, though, it was 60 pounds of rebar-reinforced concrete, ready to teach Brenda a hard physics lesson. Come Monday morning, I wheeled my new creation into its usual spot, right on schedule. 6:15 brought the growl of Brenda's oversized engine. This time she slowed her approach, clearly suspicious. The impact was glorious. Instead of the usual splintering crunch, there was a deep, solid thunk, followed by the screech of metal on stone. Her Escalade's running board bent like a soda can, while my trash bin didn't budge. I sipped my coffee at the kitchen window, watching her sit in stunned silence for a half-minute. Then, unbelievably, she tried again from another angle. Same result: more damage to her SUV, none to my fortified bin. The beauty of it all: completely legal. No city codes broken, no HOA rules violated. Just a homeowner upgrading his trash can with sturdier materials. If she wanted to keep ramming it, that was her decision and her insurance company's headache. Over the next week, her attempts got more desperate. Each hit left fresh dents and scratches on her pearl white Escalade, while my concrete trash can stayed unscathed except for a few scuff marks that made it look even more ordinary. By Friday, the neighborhood was buzzing. Her SUV had nearly $800 worth of damage, while my bin looked like it barely noticed. For once, Brenda wasn't the one controlling the story. By mid-November, she'd gone from self-appointed compliance cop to full-on amateur detective. She was obsessed, circling the block at odd hours in her battered Escalade like some suburban stalker. The first sign of her investigation came in a hushed phone call from Mrs. Olivia. "Marcus," she whispered, "that woman was in your driveway last night. A broken bar with a flashlight and some kind of scale. I saw her from my bedroom window. She was trying to weigh your trash can." I couldn't help laughing at the image of Brenda, in her blazer and sensible shoes, crouched at midnight with the bathroom scale, desperately trying to crack the mystery of my indestructible bin. And she didn't stop there. Jim Torres, our maintenance guy, told me she cornered him at the hardware store, grilling him about concrete purchases and asking which residents had been buying unusual materials. She even started lurking on my Facebook page, scrolling through old posts looking for clues about construction projects. The woman needed a new hobby, preferably one that didn't involve trespassing, stalking, or late-night garbage bin stakeouts. Brenda's obsession wasn't slowing down. The next move in her campaign came with a knock on my door one Thursday afternoon. Standing there was a weary-looking building inspector named Pete, clipboard in hand. He sighed like a man who'd rather be anywhere else. "Got a complaint filed against you," he said, flipping through his checklist. "Something about unpermitted concrete structures on residential property." I led him around to the trash can. Pete gave it a 30-second glance, tapped the side with his boot, and shook his head. "It's a garbage bin, not a foundation. No permits needed, no violations here. Honestly, I've seen people throw up whole sheds with less hassle." He scribbled something on his form, clearly annoyed he'd been dragged out for this nonsense, and left. But Brenda wasn't finished. The following week I received an official-looking notice from the HOA demanding immediate access to my property for a compliance inspection. The language was straight out of Brenda's playbook, rubber-stamped by Thornfield. Of course, luckily, by then I'd done my homework on property rights. Hours of digging into HOA case law and the Fourth Amendment had paid off. I knew about Narrett v. Lakeside Village, the case that made it clear HOAs can't just go snooping on private property without cause or an emergency. My reply was calm but firm: no inspections without a court order. If they wanted to look at my trash can, they could do it from the sidewalk like anyone else. The thought of Brenda stewing over that response was almost as satisfying as pouring the concrete itself. Meanwhile, her SUV was turning into a billboard for wire-reinforced concrete wins every time. The running board hung crooked, the bumper was cracked like a spiderweb, and one headlight had developed an ominous rattle. Neighbors were starting to take notice. During my Saturday coffee run, I overheard 3 separate conversations about that woman who keeps smashing into the same trash can. Mrs. Rodriguez had even started timing Brenda's morning routine. while the teenagers on Elm Street had created a betting pool on whether she'd hit the bin again each day. At home, the kids were split between pride and embarrassment. "Dad," Emma groaned one night at dinner, "kids at school are asking if we're the family with the concrete trash can lady." "I don't know whether to be mortified or proud." Tyler, ever the practical one, had his own idea. "What if we charged $5 a head for front row seats? We could pay for my college just off this demolition derby." The real turning point came when Patricia Lopez, the one board member who actually had a conscience, pulled me aside after a neighborhood event. She lowered her voice as we stood near the community center coffee station. "Marcus, you should know something," she said carefully. "Brenda's been meeting privately with Gerald. She's pushing the board to expand enforcement powers, set inspections, material restrictions, even background checks on contractors." But it was her next revelation that really set off alarm bells. "She's also been pushing these maintenance contracts with a company I've never heard of. Every time we talk budget, she's got proposals ready like she's been prepping them for months." That night, I switched gears from defending myself to investigating her. If Brenda was this invested in controlling neighborhood projects, maybe it wasn't just about power, maybe it was about money. Public records are gold mines if you know where to look. By Sunday evening, my digging had uncovered something that made the trash can drama look small. Brenda wasn't just a nosy neighbor. She was running a scheme, and my concrete bin had unintentionally threatened the whole thing. Normally, Sunday nights were spent helping Emma with history essays or Tyler with algebra homework. But this time, I was knee-deep in the city's contract database, following a hunch Patricia had planted. A quick search for Whitmore pulled up a company I'd never heard of before. Whitmore Construction LLC, formed just 6 months earlier. Listed owners, Brenda Whitmore, 40%, and her husband Richard as president. The timeline made my stomach turn. Company formed in May. First whole contract bid in July. Brenda's harassment campaign against me beginning in early September. The puzzle pieces clicked into place with perfect precision. I kept digging, and the picture only got uglier. Over the past 4 months, Whitmore Construction had been awarded 7 home maintenance contracts: landscaping, sidewalk patching, playground repairs, community center touch-ups. Total, $23,400. The bidding pattern told the story. Every single contract had been underbid by just $50 to $100, enough to edge out competitors without raising suspicion. It was like watching someone play poker with marked cards. Technically legal, but undeniably rigged. And here's the kicker: Brenda had personally voted to approve every single one of those contracts. 7 votes, 7 approvals, 7 payouts straight to her family business. The conflict of interest couldn't have been clearer. My earlier legal research came rushing back. Board members have a fiduciary duty to disclose financial ties. Failing to do so isn't just shady, it's a violation of nonprofit law and can trigger civil suits or even criminal fraud charges. And there it was, in black and white: business registration filings, home meeting minutes, contract awards, even bank deposit records from HOA statements. Brenda had been funneling community dues directly into her own bank account. But the most damning detail of all, the timeline. I'd first asked her about my trash can on September 15th. At the September 3rd board meeting, just 12 days earlier, she'd started questioning the maintenance budget. Her harassment campaign wasn't about me blocking the street with the bin. It started because I'd unknowingly tripped over her racket. My reinforced trash can hadn't just been in her way during morning walks, it had been standing in the path of a fraud scheme draining money from 127 homeowners. The scope of her violations made my head spin. Civil liability for financial mismanagement, criminal exposure for fraud, automatic removal from the board once conflict of interest was proven. This wasn't about trash cans anymore. It was about corruption, embezzlement, and a woman desperate enough to weaponize harassment just to bury her paper trail. I moved fast, printed every document, made redundant digital backups across 3 cloud accounts, and sent the full packet to attorney Amanda Sterling with a short note: Urgent review. Criminal implications possible. The balance of power had shifted. Brenda thought she was bullying a divorced electrician over curb appeal. What she was really facing was exposure of a fraud scheme that could wreck her finances and possibly put her in prison. Tuesday morning, I sipped coffee at my kitchen window and watched her grind the Escalade into my concrete fortress again. Over $1,200 of damage, and counting. The bin, solid as ever, hadn't budged. But for the first time since this feud started, I wasn't focused on cans, bylaws, or petty neighborhood drama. I was thinking about justice, about protecting the community, about how satisfying it would be to watch a bully realize that sometimes their victims bite back. That evening, my garage stopped being a workshop and became a war room. Workbenches pushed aside, folding tables set up, 5 mismatched chairs in a circle facing an evidence board strung with red yarn like something out of a crime drama. The team filed and by 7 sharp. Mrs. Olivia arrived first, clutching a thermos of jasmine tea, her nerves showing but her resolve clear. Jim Torres came straight from work, still in his maintenance uniform, tool belt jangling. Patricia Lopez brought a thick stack of HOA records she'd quietly lifted from the files. And last was Dale Kowalski, grinning as he carried in a box of donuts like this was a party instead of a conspiracy. "Okay," I said, pinning the last timeline chart to the wall. "Here's what we've got." The board looked like an FBI case file. $23,000 in questionable contracts, 7 separate conflicts of interest, 47 logged harassment incidents, and photo evidence of an SUV turning into a rolling wreck with each failed attack. Patricia shook her head when she saw the financial trail. I knew the contracts didn't add up, but I didn't realize she was this calculated. Every time I raised questions, she already had answers rehearsed. Dale studied the photos of Brenda's SUV with professional detachment. That bumper alone's a $2,000 repair. Alignments shot to a she lead through tires in months. Your trash can's basically teaching her an expensive physics lesson. We spent the next hour hammering out a strategy. Jim would track Brenda's moves and document any retaliation. Mrs. Olivia would run an door-to-door campaign to rally neighbor support. Patricia would work from inside the board, pushing for an independent audit. Dale would act as technical expert, translating construction evidence into something even a judge couldn't ignore. Meanwhile, Amanda Sterling confirmed we had grounds for multiple cases of harassment, fraud, board misconduct. But she stressed timing. Filed too soon, and Brenda might cover her tracks. Wait too long, and she could move money or rewrite records. That's when it clicked. 22 years as an electrician had taught me one hard truth: complex problems never have single-point fixes. Fighting HOA corruption with just property rights arguments would be like fixing a short by swapping one wire. You might solve a symptom, but the circuit stays hot. This would take a layered approach. Fixing a short circuit isn't about swapping a fuse, it's about addressing the entire system. Our plan was no different. A forefront assault, legal pressure through criminal complaints and civil suits, social pressure through petitions and community organizing, political pressure via media and municipal oversight, financial pressure through audits and contract cancellations. By Wednesday morning, the community campaign was in motion. Armed with polished presentation materials and undeniable documentation, I went door to door across Pinewood Gardens. The response was electric: 89 signatures backing property rights, 34 demanding an immediate audit, and 12 neighbors ready to testify at the board meeting. Mrs. Rodriguez on Maple Street nearly slammed her door before I could finish my introduction. 5 minutes later, she was scrawling her name furiously across the petition, muttering in Spanish about Brenda's character. She tried to fine me for leaving my kin out 15 minutes early, she snapped. 15 minutes. Like the garbage police were standing there with stopwatches. Opposition mapping revealed the lines. Brenda's die-hard supporters were older homeowners who'd benefited from her selective enforcement. The fence-sitters were mostly new families, hesitant, afraid of retaliation or worried about property values. Everyone else, ready for a reckoning. The media push took 3 days of careful prep. Channel 7's investigative team loved municipal corruption stories, and reporter Sarah Kim had already cracked similar HOA scandals. Our press kit was airtight: timelines, legal opinions, and 12 minutes of edited footage showing Brenda's increasingly unhinged collisions. The social media campaign caught fire even faster. The Pinewood Gardens Transparency Group on Facebook hit 67 members in 4 days. Neighbors piled in with their own stories of harassment and shady accounting. Someone even posted a time-lapse of Brenda's daily SUV ramming set to circus music. It spread across the suburban parent networks like wildfire. Meanwhile, my concrete trash can had taken on a life of its own. Thursday morning brought collision attempt number 53. The result, a dangling headlight housing that swung like a loose tooth. Kids started arriving early at the bus stop just to watch the show. Emma told me her classmates called our house the indestructible trash can place. However, the entrepreneur was charging 50 cents for kids at school to watch the highlight reel on his phone. By Sunday, everything was aligned. Board meeting scheduled for Tuesday. Media interviews set for Wednesday. Criminal complaints prepared for Thursday. We had 118 residents pledged to attend the showdown, with 17 ready to speak during public comment. The coalition was built. The evidence was solid. Brenda had no idea the hammer was about to fall. But the weekend before the board meeting, she snapped. Desperation has a smell of burnt coffee and panic sweat, and Brenda was radiating it from every pore. The walls were closing in, and her harassment campaign suddenly veered from irritating to criminal. Saturday night, the hiss of spray paint jolted me awake. I peered out the bedroom window. The irony? Spray paint on concrete power washes clean in 30 seconds flat. Security cameras don't just capture vandals, they capture everything. High definition, time-stamped, license plates in crystal clarity, including a pearl white Escalade parked 3 houses down during the exact window of Saturday night's spray paint stunt. By Monday, the harassment leveled up. A concerned citizen called in an anonymous complaint to the gas company, claiming I was conducting dangerous excavation that might damage utility lines. The inspector who showed up was apologetic but methodical, sweeping my yard for 2 hours with detection equipment. His verdict: no digging, no violations, no problems. Honestly, he shook his head as he loaded up his truck. Whoever called this in either needs glass ESA or therapy. There's no excavation anywhere on your property. The real twist dropped Tuesday morning. Jim Tavares found me at the hardware store, jaw tight. Marcus, she hired a private security firm, Riverside Security. I know the owner's cousin. $200 a day to sit outside your house over a trash can dispute. Woman's lost her damn mind. What Jim didn't realize, Brenda's surveillance cut both ways. My upgraded system was recording her, to every late-night drive-by, every creepy roadside photo session, every erratic lap through the neighborhood. She was unraveling faster than a bargain bin extension cord, and I had the receipts. By Wednesday, it stopped being funny. Emma came home quiet, fighting tears. She'd overheard Brenda whispering to another parent about bad influences and the wrong kind of role models for neighborhood kids. The racial undertones weren't even subtle. Worse, the implications for my custody case were obvious. That night I hired Beth Morrison, a retired detective who specialized in harassment investigations. For $200 a day, she'd document Brenda's every move and testify to escalation patterns if it came to court. The sabotage kept escalating. Battery acid splashed on my concrete can left a mark, but no damage. A flood of anonymous city complaints about my lawn, my wiring permits, even my mailbox. Fake one-star reviews on my business listing appeared faster than I could report them. But Friday brought the breaking point. Tyler was in the driveway, working on his bike, when his voice went tight. "A broken bar. What's this thing under your truck?" I crouched beside him. Small, black, magnetic mount, blinking LEDs. A GPS tracker. Professional grade. $300 at least. Definitely illegal without consent. I photographed it, bagged it, and drove straight to the police station. Officer Derek Martinez took one look inside like a man who'd seen this escalation too many times. "Mr. Holloway, this isn't a neighborhood spat anymore. This is stalking, criminal surveillance, harassment. We're opening a case file." The insurance angle unraveled simultaneously. Brenda had filed a $3,200 claim for road hazard damage, swearing her collisions happened on public streets. Problem was, my Ring cameras had logged 53 separate incidents, every one of them targeting my trash can, on my property, in high definition. When State Farm's investigator called me in, I handed over the package, video compilation, witness statements, professional assessments. He didn't need 5 minutes. Ma'am, this isn't road hazard damage. This is intentional property destruction with your own vehicle. Claim denied. Case referred to fraud. Meanwhile, the community pressure hit boiling point. Our Facebook group climbed to 94 members. Mrs. Patterson posted about Rosebush fines. The Johnsons revealed violation notices for their kids' sidewalk chalk drawings. Even Gerald Thornfield, Brenda's most reliable ally, was quietly pulling away. Saturday morning brought collision attempt number 57. This time, Brenda's entire bumper detached, skidding into my driveway like roadkill. Watching her crawl around in a skirt suit, scrambling to collect plastic scraps while neighbors peered through blinds, was almost comical. Almost. By Sunday night, the war chest was complete. Criminal conduct documented, witness statements notarized, fraud exposed, coalition organized. Tuesday's board meeting wouldn't be a confrontation, it would be an execution. Brenda just didn't know she was the one on trial. Brenda made her most desperate play yet. Monday morning, Gerald Thornfield's gravel-throated voicemail hit my phone like an alarm bell. Emergency closed-door session. Liability concerns. Safety issues. Show up. Translation: the board was panicking. Through the blinds of the community center office, I could see three jittery board members hunched around a conference table while Prescott Associates $400 an hour attorney, Harold Masterson, shuffled papers like a man already regretting his career choices. Brenda paced, flinging documents like white flags. Patricia Lopez texted me play-by-play from inside. Brenda's claiming you made terrorist threats. Wants emergency powers to seize a dangerous modifications. Harold looks like he'd rather be defending serial killers. The cover-up was as clumsy as her driveway collisions. Someone had backdated conflict of interest forms for Whitmore Construction, but the server timestamps told the truth. You can't retroactively invent ethics compliancy, not when every contract vote is in public minutes. Meanwhile, the insurance investigation had shifted into overdrive. Maria Santos, state investigator, subpoenaed whole records, board minutes, and every email between Brenda and the insurer. The paper trail was a slow-motion train wreck, each piece of evidence more damning than the last. Then came Tuesday's curveball. Richard Whitmore, yes, Brenda's husband, called me directly. His voice was flat, drained. Marcusa broken bar. This is to stop. She's burned $8,000 on lawyers, surveillance, repairs. Our insurance is cancelled. Contracts are collapsing. I need to know what will it take to make this go away. For half a second, I pitied the guy. Half a second. Richard, your wife stalked my family, vandalized my property, committed fraud, and stole from 127 homeowners. This doesn't go away with an apology and a check. Brenda's desperation hit a new low 2 hours before the board meeting. She filed for an emergency restraining order, stuffing it with fabricated voicemails, doctored photos, and witness statements from people who didn't exist. Judge Patricia Williams didn't even blink. These recordings are edited. These photos are staged. These witnesses are fictional. Miss Whitmore, filing false evidence is contempt of court. Consider this your only warning. By then, Brenda's problems were multiplying faster than her bumper collisions. The state insurance commissioner had Santos building a fraud case. The DA was reviewing stalking and harassment charges. And the IRS now had a neat folder of Whitmore Construction's unreported income. By 6 o'clock Tuesday, the community center looked like Black Friday at Best Buy. Cars lined Maple Street for blocks. Neighbors carried folding chairs and protest signs. Channel 7's news van parked at 5:30 sharp, with Channel 12 and Metro Weekly right behind. Inside, the tension was thick enough to chew. 118 residents crammed into a room built for 40. Sweat and burnt coffee mingling under buzzing fluorescents. Brenda swept in fashionably late, dressed in funeral black, hands trembling. Gerald Thornfield tugged at his eye like it was strangling him. Harold Masterson cleared his throat and launched into boilerplate about frivolous complaints and disruptive residents. It lasted all of 30 seconds. "Excuse me," Mrs. Olivia interrupted, rising with the stack of sworn statements, her accent precise, her tone razor-sharp. "But which one of us has been committing insurance fraud and embezzling from homeowners?" The room erupted applause. Laughter. Cheers. 17 neighbors lined up to speak, each armed with documentation, harassment reports, financial discrepancies, collision videos, notarized complaints, 3 bankers' boxes brimmed with evidence, and Dana the Hammer dropped. At 6:45 sharp, Officer Derek Martinez pushed through the doors, folder in hand. His voice cut through the roar like a blade. "Sorry to interrupt, but I have a warrant to serve regarding insurance fraud and stalking charges." The color drained from Brenda's face like coolant leaking from her battered Escalade. Harold leaned in, whispering frantic legal advice. Thornfield clutched his chest like the room was closing in. Game over. Checkmate. The community center had never seen anything like it. Every homeowner in Pinewood Gardens, a 127-stronger, packed into a space meant for 40, with 15 media reps crowding the back, cameras rolling like it was a presidential debate. The air buzzed with heat, anger, vindication. And me, I sat in the third row, flanked by Mrs. Olivia and Jim Torres, and my concrete trash can parked proudly beside me like a silent co-counsel. Exhibit I. The battered concrete trash can sat proudly beside the podium, 60 pounds of stubborn symbolism. No one in the room missed the message. Brenda's reign of chaos had literally rolled itself into evidence. At the board table, she looked like a prisoner waiting on the hangman's call. Funeral black replaced her usual navy, her eyes darting toward the exits like a trapped animal. Harold Masterson muttered frantic legal advice in her ear while Gerald Thornfield sweated through his shirt as if awaiting his own execution. Officer Martinez's warrant folder sat on the edge of the table, an unspoken death sentence. The room was silent except for the mechanical whir of news cameras and the rapid staccato of Brenda's pen taping against the table at Oppo Morse code for "help me." Gerald's voice cracked when he called the meeting back to order. "We'll now hear public comments regarding recent community concerns." I rose, carrying my boards like a prosecutor about to deliver closing arguments. The packed room hushed until the only sound was the faint hum of the exit sign transformer. "Ladies and gentlemen," I began, voice steady, "this isn't about trash cans, or HOA bylaws, or so-called community standards. This is about accountability, transparency, and ending corruption before it destroys Pinewood Gardens." The timeline came first: 57 documented collision attempts, each caught in crisp high definition. GPS trackers illegally planted on my car. Spray paint vandalism on my fence. Fake insurance claims of felony fraud in black and white. But the real punch landed with the financials. Using a borrowed projector, I lit up the wall with the contracts. $23,400 siphoned directly from HOA dues into Brenda's family business account. "Every month, your rising fees have been funding Mrs. Whitmore's construction company," I said, watching jaws drop across the room. 7 contracts, 7 undisclosed conflicts of interest, 7 violations of state non-profit law. Then came the highlight reel, 12 minutes of Brenda's vehicular kamikaze stunts, soundtracked by crunching bumpers and shattering plastic. The crowd gasped, laughed nervously, then outright cheered. "Time for the mic drop." "Mrs. Whitmore," I said, turning squarely toward her as cameras zoomed in. "You've burned $3,400 on lawyers, destroyed a $60,000 SUV, committed fraud, stalked my family all over a $23 trash can. But the real crime, the $47,000 you stole from this community through your company." The eruption was instant. Neighbors who'd grumbled for years suddenly understood where their money had gone. Mrs. Rodriguez shouted in rapid-fire Spanish that drew applause. Teenagers from Elm Street clapped like it was a halftime show. And then Brenda cracked. She shot to her feet like a jack-in-the-box, composure detonating in front of the cameras. "This is harassment," she shrieked, voice climbing into a frequency only dogs could love. "These people don't understand property values or community standards. They move into decent neighborhoods and think the rules don't apply." The racial undertones hung in the air like smoke after a fire. Channel 7's camera captured every venomous syllable, every wild gesture, every second of her unraveling. Mrs. Olivia audibly gasped when Brenda singled her out as shouting about certain elements ruining the community. Masterson lunged, trying to rein her in, but Brenda was beyond saving. She grabbed my evidence boards, ripping at them like a drowning woman tearing at wreckage until Jim Torres and two neighbors calmly restrained her. Brenda was detonating in real time, mascara streaking down her face like black war paint while Officer Martinez calmly jotted notes for the incident report. "I built this community," she wailed. "I protected property values. I sacrificed everything for neighborhood integrity, and this is how you treat me?" Her voice cracked onto a shriek. Gerald Thornfield called for recess, but no one budged. Why would they? This was better than Netflix, a part soap opera, part courtroom drama, part karmic slapstick. Then Patricia Lopez stood, calm amid the chaos. "I move for the immediate suspension of Brenda Whitmore from the board, pending criminal investigation and financial audit." The vote was unanimous, 4-0, Brenda abstaining only because she was literally handcuffed to Officer Martinez's chair. Justice served, concrete cold, with a garnish of public humiliation. What followed was less a collapse than an implosion. Within 48 hours, Brenda's empire crumbled faster than her Escalade suspension under concrete impact. Tuesday brought her resignation, packaged into bitter text messages about hostile work environments. Thursday, the district attorney filed insurance fraud charges, 6 months possible jail time, $5,000 fine. By Friday, her insurance license was revoked, her construction certification suspended, her business blacklisted. The audit hit hardest. Patterson Associates recovered $47,000 in padded contracts and overcharges. Every homeowner got a $170 refund check by Christmas, the sweetest holiday bonus Pinewood Gardens had ever seen. Even Richard Whitmore finally broke. His voice was flat when he called me. "The settlement check is in the mail, $12,500, as agreed." Brenda's moving to Florida with her sister. I almost pitied him. Almost. Then I remembered the GPS tracker, the false claims, the months of harassment. Sympathy died quickly, but from the wreckage came renewal. Patricia Lopez was elected board president unanimously, running on transparency and engagement. The new board required conflict of interest disclosures, monthly financial reports, and competitive bidding processes strict enough to make City Hall jealous. The first project, a new playground funded entirely by recovered embezzlement money. Watching Emma and Tyler sketch equipment ideas beside neighbors who once whispered about us was vindication made tangible. The case spread beyond Pinewood Gardens. HOA v. Pinewood Gardens HOA was cited in a dozen property rights cases. The state legislature passed the HOA Accountability Act, now considered the gold standard for oversight. Channel 7 won a regional Emmy for their series. Reporter Sarah Kim still calls me for quotes. The videos went viral, over 200,000 views on YouTube. Communities across Ohio began staging their own resistance movements. Our indestructible trash can was moved into the community center lobby, complete with a bronze plaque. Property rights protected. 2023. It became a rite of passage. New residents hear the story at orientation. Contractors ask to see it like tourists visiting a monument. And every September, we hold the Concrete Can Days Festival, bounce houses, barbecue competitions, homeowner rights workshops. Last year's attendance topped 800. Drama turned to tradition. Resistance turned to celebration. The settlement money started a scholarship, the Marcus Holloway Property Rights Fund. It backs students who show creativity in resisting institutional abuse. Future rabble-rousers, rewarded for refusing to swallow injustice quietly. Emma wrote her college essay about fighting corruption with concrete evidence. She got into 3 journalism programs. Tyler launched Suburban Justice, a YouTube channel covering HOA disputes with the zeal of a teenage Woodward Bernstein. The fight healed more than I expected. My custody evaluation soared. The judges apparently like parents who stand their ground through evidence instead of violence. My electrical contracting business boomed too. Turns out methodical documentation and strategic problem-solving translate perfectly from HOA wars to wiring projects. Sometimes David really does beat Goliath, but only if David shows up with evidence. Aliasa A and 60 pounds of steel reinforced concrete. Drop a comment below and share your own HOA nightmare. We're building a library of corruption stories so neighbors everywhere can learn how to fight back. And if you like seeing the underdog win with preparation, patience, and a little creative problem solving, hit that subscribe button. Around here, Justice tastes better when it's served with community support. Thanks for watching HOA Secrets, the place where overreaching HOA Karens finally meet their match. If this tale had you laughing, or cheering, smash that like button, share your reaction in the comments, and subscribe so you don't miss the next unbelievable HOA showdown.